Okay, so welcome to anybody still joining us, and thanks to those of you who are already here for sticking around. We finished the last session on time, so I believe we should start this session on time. You're all very welcome. I don't have much of an introduction. I will just pass over to Walter. I hope, Walter, you managed to get a bit refreshed after a very enjoyable and interesting opening session. A reminder to unmute yourself before you start to take us through the session.
Thank you very much, James. Yes, I did get myself a nice cup of coffee. That keeps us Dutch going. I'm sure I hope that's also for many of you. You are able to have a break, the ones who are basically going through different sessions. Please always go for a walk in your 10 minutes and refresh yourself so that we move on. So the purpose of the current session is to have a little bit I can see baobab juice is very good also, but even better, it's more healthy probably than the coffee. But the current session, to all the people who are joining now new, welcome to Guiding Seed Sector Transformation in Africa. We are going now into a session where we really are going to look into how the different, seed sector transformation links to the Food System Summit. That's a dialogue that we started already in the opening session, but we would like to take a more historic perspective doing so this session. We have invited a number of people coming to join us. Some of the people who have been in different phases of ISSD and guiding sector transformation, be critical partners for us in Wageningen and getting us through. What I will start with first is share a little bit how we see a sector transformation to go forward. Then gradually, one by one, I will introduce the different panelists to you and with some very targeted questions to them. Next slide, please. So what you see is what we mentioned earlier, that there are a number of on-the-ground national programs that we are working with from Wageningen, from KIT. You see the GSST Africa program that is in its halfway moving through with addressing very different topics. We are celebrating today the conclusion of two important programs that have been operating in Uganda and Ethiopia. And actually also celebrating new programs, and there's only two logos positioned here, but there are several more. One is the new project that has been launched by IFDC, KIT, SG 2000, ECRISAT, and which also we from Wageningen are contributing to, is ISSD Sahel, that will operate in Mali and Niger. And also there is a new logo for where is the collaborative seed program, which is part of the Nigeria-Netherlands seed partnership. So these are really different areas where Wageningen University and Research, kids, and many of you present here are working, are contributing, are sharing their experiences. Next slide, please. So again, this seems to be a little bit of a repetition for the people who were there in the previous presentation. But we will, in this conference, we want to link activities in the seed sector to 4 global summits, important events, and it's also a reminder to us to what really are global, but also African ambitions moving forward with food, with climate, with nutrition, and how from a seed sector we can approach that. And basically, if we talk about transformation, is basically how can we build the capacities, address challenges in a way that they contribute to those global, but in that sense also national, continental, but also local agendas. Next slide, please. So if we now zoom in quite a little bit at the United Nations Food System Summit, there are 5 tracks. Yeah. So one is very much about safe and nutritious food. Second, about sustainable consumption patterns. The third one is to boost nature-positive production. The fourth, advance equitable livelihoods. And the fifth, to build resilience to vulnerability, shocks, and stress. We really want to basically, even though these are individual tracks, we from Wageningen really want to approach this also, keep on approaching this, that it should be really a combination of socioeconomic, environmental, and food security and nutrition that they move from. To do that, we really try to move forward with developing a framework. Next slide, please. What you see here, I hope you won't go into detail here, is that is a framework that we based in Wageningen has been developed, that has also been guiding several of the policy decisions and moving forward in the Netherlands government. And we hope it will help you also to link your activities in the seed sector to the larger food systems dialogues and food system outcomes. So in this figure, it's basically consisting of 4 panels. On the extreme left side, you see food system activities. That can be anything. Yeah? It's the composition of all the activities that basically contribute to the production, all the way to consumption of food systems. That can be aspects related to different sectors, horticulture, potato, dairy, but they can also be more environmental and other aspects too, that are all part of that larger food system. At the top level, you see socioeconomic drivers, all such as sort of market development, demography, other aspects. And at the bottom, you have environmental drivers. So it can be climate change, it's soil fertility, that really are aspects that impact and also define what needs to be done at the food system level. What you see in the second column, we have started to zoom in as one part of what we call a sector approach within the larger food system. And a sector exists out of different activities. If you go to the lower block, you see production and value chain development as critical activities within a sector. Of course, in seed, that is also applicable because seed is produced and then basically through a value chain, it reaches their consumers, basically farmers buying or acquiring or saving their own seed. There are many different services required there. For example, in service provision, it's very clear that service provision is many things. Service provision can be quality assurance, it can be financial credits, services, it can be extension. There's many different services supporting the seed sector. The bottom part we call, and then of course you have the consumption. In the end, is basically you can approach that the consumption is basically reaching farmers producing seed, reaching farmers using the seed in their production, and thereby basically producing the food that will be critical. In the second column, you also, when you go up a little bit there, you can go that what we call the more governance part of the whole sector, including regulation. How is seed being quality assessed? How do varieties move into the system? What kind of coordination is there? What kind of investments are made to make sure that crop improvement is taking place, that new varieties are there, that services are being delivered, and also how stakeholders are organized. Often we approach in Wageningen a seed sector more in a national level, but then also what was mentioned already in the earlier session is that you have all these different crops where, for example, if you take cassava or millets or maize or tomato or local African leafy vegetables, actually these different aspects, how they are in a sector organized, depends also on the crop and also the seed system there. But let's take the whole seed sector as one point. The seed sector in a given country has clear outcomes. First, outcomes. Of course, they have socio-economic outcomes linking to basically if farmers use their seed of better quality, They will be able to earn an income, work in their livelihoods. It creates employment. It creates opportunities for particular groups in communities. And it also has environmental incomes. Maya already mentioned it in the previous sector, that the role of crop improvement in environmental outcomes, getting new varieties with farmers able to respond to changes, is a critical one. If we go to the third column in the middle block, this is what we want to call seed sector outcomes. Many of you will know the terms of seed use, seed stability, seed access, and seed availability. We really want to add the other one, which is basically crop and varietal portfolio, dealing with changes, both socioeconomic and environmental. It's critical that a crop and varietal portfolio is one of the aspects really of the is basically one of the attributes of seed system outcomes. So where, if this is functioning well, or basically these outcomes from a seed sector are not just enough. Basically, we have to look how they contribute to the larger food system. Top level, again, the socioeconomic outcomes, such as employment, income, empowerment of women, giving opportunity for the youth to assume big roles and contribute to the functioning of food systems. At the bottom, also environmental outcomes, where basically the food systems is more resilient, can respond to the various changes, operates in a more way that is ecologically friendly or in nature positive. So, but in the end, also how to link the work that we do in the seed sector contributes to healthy diets by making sure that for the different crops relevant to healthy diets, we invest, and also that farmers can gain access to quality seed of improved varieties or superior varieties for producing the crops that are critical to healthy diets. But then also, again, food use, food stability, food access, and food availability. This sounds all pretty conceptual, but we try to assist and also guide the whole debate in this conference, helping to link our individual work in seed sectors more to the larger food system framework. What I have done now is invited 4 persons that have been playing different roles in the development of ISSD programs and also in guiding seed sector transformation, for example, in Nigeria, to join me in this panel. And I will go with them through some earlier frameworks, how they can link that. I would like to ask first to, let me go to the next slide so I can show you what kind of different frameworks are there. Some of you are part of the larger ISSD family, know many of those figures already. But I want to zoom in first at the top left part figure, which is a figure that really was in the source of our ISSD work quite some time ago. Can we go to the next slide? Maya, please can you unmute yourself and show your camera? This is a figure that is pretty familiar to you. Yeah, we worked in the 2007, 8, 9. We worked quite a bit with that. It comes also from the earlier work, then we were still working with plant genetic resources. We started with this figure also in Ethiopia, because in Ethiopia we started to work with integrated seed sector development. And you have in the center here, we have the informal system, outside we have the formal system, and we were really looking for ways, how different ways there can be interactions between both. Can you share a little bit? And I just want to mention also that I mentioned earlier that in 2008, only 2008, again, food came back to the global arena. Before, it really got less attention because of the global food crisis that was happening. This crisis also basically brought the whole development community back to focus also on agriculture. And in fact, that we have now today also the UN Food System Summit, I think is also a consolidation that food security and nutrition remains at the heart of our attention. But can you reflect a bit on that, Vera? How we have used it in our ISSD Ethiopia with our partners in Ethiopia to move it forward, and can you try to link it to that other figure which is in the back on basically how you see seed systems and seed sector development contribute to food systems?
Okay, thank you very much, Walter. This is a very interesting figure indeed. And it was developed by Connie Almekinders, Niels Lauwers, and Walter de Boef. And it shows indeed the farmer seed system in the center, where farmers select their seed as part of their crop production. They select the seed, they save the seed and use it for the next cropping cycle, and exchange some of it with other farmers, or even may sell some of it locally. Whereas the formal system is presented as a chain of events, starting with genetic resources collection at gene banks used for the development of new varieties, where professional breeders develop these varieties. Varieties are tested and evaluated in different circumstances that are officially released. And then, different type of seed producers are multiplying seed of these varieties, which are then marketed. So which is more a chain. And what you see in this figure, what is interesting is that you only see two linkages between these two systems, which is in the area of genetic resources, which may be collected from farmer fields to use for the development of new varieties, and just farmers buying seeds from the formal seed system. So thinking about that, within our team, we realized that both formal systems and informal systems or local seed systems, they have both their own strengths and weaknesses. And as you mentioned before, one of the issues that is important for us is to recognize the reality of farmers in Africa, where still for most crops, 80% of the seed that they use is from informal seed systems. So then we start thinking, how can we better connect those two systems where both systems actually benefit? So how can we create more linkages than just at the end of genetic resource and the end of marketing? So we started working with the Ethiopian Seed Enterprise in Ethiopia, where we supported them to strengthen their farmer-based seed production scheme. And we started thinking of sustainable models for supporting local seed production or farmer-based seed production. And then we developed this model of local seed business. At the same time, we looked at how can we bring professionals and farmers together in the area of genetic resources management? How can we promote participatory crop improvements, bringing farmers and professional breeders together? But also, how can we create a more enabling environment for informal seed supply and address that in policy issues? And I would like to refer to this book, which we published in 2008, and it's called Farmers, Seeds and Varieties, Supporting Informal Seed Supply in Ethiopia. So that is how we started in Ethiopia, supporting local seed business. And that is how eventually the ISSD approach evolved. And talking with different professionals about the ISSD approach, one time somebody told me, this is quite a schizophrenic approach. You either support the informal system or you support the formal system. But we think it's not true. You can support both, you can strengthen both, because each of them have their own strength and weaknesses. Then thinking of trade-offs also in the context of food systems. So when you talk about the socioeconomic outcomes, you talk about issues like inclusion, and then you think about seed security and seed sovereignty. And then you may work with farmers on producing their own seed through local seed business. On the other hand, for specific crops. On the other hand, you have large-scale seed companies who do very well in producing quality seeds of crops like maize, of crops like wheat, of vegetables. So you can think of trade-offs, but you can also think about complementarity. But in the end, like I also mentioned the other session, you can only invest your money once. So you need to think like, which outcomes do I want to achieve? Do I want to focus on seed sovereignty? Then you may make different choices than when you focus on efficiency, economy of scale for maize seed. The same accounts for the outcomes at environmental level, where you can think of large-scale professional crop improvement programs of maize, which will be organized differently than when talking about underutilized crop and species, which are important for farmer seed security and food security, and need a different approach in variety development and seed supply, strengthening seed supply.
Yeah, so I think you emphasize one of the big points that we have taken on from the start is to say, first we have started to accept that there are both formal and informal systems. Now we say, okay, there's many different crops, they all have their own role and critical in food security and nutrition, but they also have their own role and in socioeconomic outcomes and environmental outcomes. So that the spirit of ISSD moving forward to say, okay, appreciate crops, appreciate different varieties that are developed, and then really take that forward and don't take blanket solutions, appreciate the different seed systems. And even if for one crop there might be still two different seed systems available in a country, where farmers source for one crop, for let's say the one use, local varieties and their own informal seeds, so they may for the same crop also look for other more formal or commercial sources. So I think it's your emphasis of complementarity is a critical one that we take from ISSD forward, and also is critical in the way we approach seed systems addressing issues from equality and at the same time environmental aspects. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Peter Gildemacher, our brother from KIT, the Royal Tropical Institute. Peter has been involved with us in several programs of the ISSD. We really hope that Peter's camera can be on also soon. And I'm showing, welcome Peter to this session.
Thank you.
You see the background, you see the figure on the food systems there, but I think I want you to zoom in a little bit to these different guiding principles that you also in ISSD Africa, where Wageningen together with KIT and many partners, we really team up and we have used them a lot. Can you reflect a little bit on, let's say, how three of those, Mariam emphasized some already, but how three of those principles, if we start to basically move to guiding seed sector transformation, contributing to food systems with these three different outcomes, what can we take from them and how can we use them strategically moving forward in the sector transformation for the seed sector? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. It's good indeed that you say that, ask me to highlight only three, because if we have to talk about all the 8 principles, we have experienced that it takes a bit too long. So I'll highlight 3 principles of my choice. And the first one I would like to talk about is work according to the structure of the seed value chain. Basically, the reason for that principle is the same as in other agricultural value chain work. That if you use a value chain approach, you start with the end user. And in seed sector development, it is very important to put the end user of the seed, which is the farmer, first. because that helps you in designing seed sector interventions and looking for change. It helps in always keeping the end user central. Because all too often seed sector interventions only address components of the seed sector, which is in a way fine. There's always things that need to be addressed, but even if you look at those components, you have to see the larger system, and you have to reason from the perspective of the end user of the seed. What is there that we can improve? As an example, some of you may know I work quite a bit in Burundi on seed sector development. As an example, in the seed sector development project in Burundi, in the GSST Burundi project, we used a rapid analysis of the seed value chain to make decisions about where to focus. And for example, for maize, because after doing that rapid analysis, we realized that the main challenge at that point in time was not that there were so few varieties available. There were not many in terms of hybrid maize varieties, but the main problem that farmers were, that the system was facing was that there was no commercial distribution of hybrid maize. If you look at plus, at the same time, the demand was poorly developed because there was a misconception across the country about what hybrid maize was, and that misconception was there at farmer level, but also at more decision maker level. So there we decided we had to focus on a mindset change on what is the added value of hybrid maize and work on the commercial distribution based on an analysis of the seed chain of maize in Burundi. So that's the first principle. The second principle I would like to talk about is promote entrepreneurship and market orientation. In the GSST principles, that is an important one because and the idea is to try to make business out of seed production and services wherever possible. It doesn't mean it's always possible. You will still need public services, but where possible, try to make it a for-profit service. Why? For-profit, again, forces a client orientation. And if you provide a service that your client doesn't want, you will never make a profit. Also, if it is a for-profit service, there's an automatic sustainability in continuing to provide the service. There's a continuing incentive to provide service and to produce seed or to provide other services. Also, a competition between different actors supports innovation in the sector, and we have learned that, of course, in the seed sector, making a profit is easy for hybrids, and the main challenge is in making profit out of what we call low profit seed. And in GSST Africa, we have done some investigation across African countries and show quite some evidence that there are also ways of making profit out of low profit seed. And that drives the sustainability of seed production and seed marketing. And it is quite possible to make a profit out of crops for which it's quite hard to make a profit, like beans, rice, groundnuts. It's not easy, but it is possible. And profit can be a driver of the development of the seed chains of these crops. An example again from Burundi. In the GSST Africa project, we have supported the GSST Burundi project. We have supported up to 50 seed multipliers in developing their own branding and packaging of bean seed production, which immediately gave a trigger to the marketing of the beans and assisted also in having distributors interested in picking up that seed and selling it in shops, compared to before that, the seed multipliers selling just from their home. Third example, recognize the relevance of informal seed systems. Maria already alluded it a bit. It has to be recognized that informal systems of seed recycling and farmer-to-farmer exchange serve an important purpose. They do not just exist because the formal system is underdeveloped. They exist for a purpose of their own, and they carry the advantage of proximity, low cost, inclusion of land races. So it's not that they exist because the formal system is poorly developed. They exist because they serve a purpose. For example, an example from potatoes. It does make no sense for an East African potato farmer to replace his seed every season. There's no economic sense in that. A good farmer, a good potato farmer, is able to recycle his or her seed for 3-4 seasons, depending on how good you are as a farmer in managing the generation. You can recycle 3 to 4 seasons before you buy seed again. Well, recycling is in essence an informal way of dealing with your seed. And it serves a purpose. It makes economic sense. Another example, the current leading potato variety in Kenya, Shangi, emerged as an informal variety. It was never in the beginning registered. It probably escaped from research, and it emerged through the informal system and has also been supported with seed through the informal system and became the #1 variety in Kenya. Only after that, it got registered, which is good that it got registered, because now also certified seed of Shangi is available next to the informal system. So 3 examples of ISSD guiding principles. Walter, your question was also, how does that relate to the food?
Yeah, because basically, let me come in, because let me help you a little bit, because I think the examples you gave are really highlights of how these principles are put to practice. So how can, if we deal with our contribution in seed sector transformation to food and nutrition security, and in the examples you have given there, well, but are we also cognizant about how we can contribute to basically aspects relating with our environmental outcomes and socioeconomic? These cannot be excluded anymore. The food system pushes us to bring those together. And I think, how do you see that these principles can evolve and even guide us moving forward in our next generation seed work for the coming decade?
Yeah, well, I think above these 8 guiding principles for the design of seed sector interventions, there's one major overarching principle. And that is that seed sector development is not an objective on its own. And the objective of a well-performing seed system is to contribute to an inclusive food system. And it's through that inclusive food system that we can have impact at scale. So if you talk about the socioeconomic impact of seed sector development, that is partly indirect. It is through the seed users. And the ISSD guiding principles keep us sharp on aiming for assisting seed users in getting better access and promote the use of quality seed. And in that, it is quite important that the ISSD guiding principles really focus on inclusion and the understanding that there is a diversity of seed users, and that to reach food system outcomes, you need to take into consideration that diversity of seed users. If you don't do that, you can never reach the potential impact of improving seed systems. So for that, I think it's the principles help you in staying focused on wider system outcomes, rather than only building a commercially thriving seed sector, which could be an objective of its own, but it's not in my humble opinion, a development objective, and that's an economic objective. The development objective is in the food systems level, and there the basic principle is that seed is the basis of all agricultural production, and providing the whole diversity of farmers with good quality seed has an impact on those farmers and their livelihoods, and can contribute to a living income for the diversity of farmers, and at the same time contributes to reducing the cost of food production. So it can contribute to access to nutritious and healthy food for
Okay, thank you.
end users. Yeah, maybe my time is up, Walter.
Yeah, or it's more than up. So
Yeah.
you have talked enough. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I'm very happy that, thank you very much, Peter. But I think your point on that adding that inclusive element maybe to the principles is an interesting one. I think it will come up many times. I really want to welcome Geoffrey, our colleague from ISD Uganda, to the panel. We go one slide back because then we will show a figure that he has been working on with his colleagues, with his partners in Uganda over the last decades, basically. Yeah. So, Geoffrey, can you explain a little bit what this figure means to you and how it basically has helped you to make an impact on the seed sector in Uganda and also benefiting different types of seed users, same as Peter has mentioned?
Thank you very much, Walter, for inviting me and having me here. I'm very glad to share the experience from Uganda, basing on the experience of the ISSD methodology, which has helped us find a way to reinforce seed access to quality seed in Uganda. Referring to this figure, we learned that very many farmers access seed from very many sources, and all these sources were not well coordinated, with exception for higher level sources. Like if you look at this figure, the farmer saved seeds, farmers were usually recycling their own local seeds. And of course, with the changing climate, changing farming practices, crop production, yields, and diseases, all this has reduced farmers' capacities to survive. But of course, farmers continue to improve on interaction through community-based production. But all this could not realize a sensible results because there is poor coordination, poor control, poor support through the public sector system. However, the local seed business then came in, how farmers tend to understand that it is better to organize themselves in a more structured, a fairly formalized way of producing seed and be able to access a more elite research, high nutritious varieties from research, which can be controlled through minimum certification system, hence increasing access to quality seed. And in this case, crops which have been mentioned by Peter, such as self-pollinated crops, the beans, the groundnuts, the potatoes, even the sweet potatoes, cassava, they make the biggest food security crops in Uganda and most of East Africa. But without the supply of quality seed, their productivity has been miserable. However, now with the introduction of this local seed business, which is a principle behind the ISSD methodology, has significantly sprung up access to quality seed. And this has created a new dimension of working between now what we call the semi-formal seed system, which involves the local seed business, and then they are producing already recognized seed class, which is a quality declared seed, a more specialized seed class that devise strategies to deliver quality seed of these crop varieties in Uganda, and it's doing wonders to many farmers. And this has created a good partnership also with the formal seed sector, where many national seed companies who are focusing more on highly valued hybrid crops like maize, hybrid vegetables, and they interact because in most cases, farmers who buy maize, they also need groundnut. Farmers who buy hybrid vegetables, they also need sesame. So to complete the whole seed system access, you find a collaboration between the seed, the local seed businesses, and also the seed companies have created a stronger basis to have a stronger seed sector in Uganda. So we see that this will grow toward improving interactions in the seed sector, and we see this as a very strong structure which has created a stronger foundation for seed system in Uganda.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a little bit pushing the time because our time this session is 50 minutes, but I think you make a very clear case to say, okay, what has happened in those years is really make it the seed sector more inclusive by addressing different crops, dealing with different services, adapting quality assurance, and develop a new class of entrepreneurs in Uganda to make sure that the different crops are covered. I would like to ask, thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to ask Falak to open her camera and also join the debate, and stay with us because for the closing remarks. Falak, good morning to you in Lagos.
Good morning, Walter.
Falak is one of our partners in the collaborative seed program. She's representing Sahel Consulting from Nigeria. Falak, if you see this figure with these colored blocks and all these bullet points, can you share a little bit what it is and how you think it is an example of taking a sector transformation approach moving forward from your experience working on the National Seed Roadmap?
Thank you so much, Walter. From my experience of the work we did at developing the National Seed Roadmap, we had to look at an inclusive approach, an inclusive system where we have a clear vision for what the system is going to look like. And at the very beginning, the first thing, and that actually borrows from the work that ISD did in terms of the approach to developing an integrated and sustainable seed system. So we defined first some of the key elements of what a high-performing seed sector would look like. And some of the key points we have are competitiveness, resilience, profitable, and I know Peter mentioned profitability quite a bit, innovative and adaptive. We mentioned sustainability in social, economic, and environment terms. And that also links to some of the component, the food system outcomes that you've mentioned. And we also have it to be resistant and transparent. So looking at all of those, then we've encompassed them in the different boxes that you have on the screen now. And it looks beyond just individual crops or value chain. It actually has a system thinking to it. This framework uses the vision of the point, it as a point of departure. We look at the food system, say where we want to be, not where we currently are, and how we can work towards that. And for the food system to work very well, it really needs a strong production base and to perform well. So the first one, looking at the service provisions, seed production and seed market development, the first place there, we're really thinking about at the production level, what is the system, what is the landscape environment that has to be available for these farmers to be able to have access to quality seed for their production. And also in relation to this production, we also have putting in place an environment that performs well. And in that sense, we looked at the revenue generation and reinvestment, coordination, and government's regulation and management. We understand, we all know, and based on what some of the comments that were made earlier as well, it's really important to have rules and systems that govern the seed market. That is a way, and that is especially important for Nigeria that has a market that needs a lot of regulation, that we know a lot of work is being done towards that, but channeling that and catalyzing that in a way that is clear for all the stakeholders to understand where we're moving towards. I think that is one of the key drivers here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Falak. So can we move to the larger next slide, please? So what basically also Falak showed that she really shared with us how in the National Seed Roadmap of Nigeria, we really took a more sector approach, looking at all these different aspects and to cover all crops, but to really zoom in at different elements of the sector. So we have about 6 minutes left for our final observation. So I will start with Geoffrey, Falak, move to Peter, and then Maya. So I really want to ask you, what if you think about the work that you have been doing, also the discussions we have had so far, what do you really want to share? Because we have about now 120 people across Africa and the world joining us in this meeting. So what do you really want to, what do you consider a critical point for people working in the seed sector, really for the benefit of farmers in Africa? So what do you think is a critical point that we take forward for the coming years in our work in the seed sector? So Geoffrey, please, what is your point? What point would you bring to the table? Bring one with a little bit of background.
Thank you very much, Walter, for that. I would think the most magic lessons here are like people to take is the coexistence between the seed systems that support the different food value chains. Mm-hmm. It is important that even the food crops that do not command serious commercial value, command serious nutritional values, and requires a good effort to align their seed system to work at a context that is more profitable, like through the local seed business system or through the QDS system, and also supporting a legal framework that support operation. They should not be left to operate as an informal traditional system. They should be given a modest legal framework that support their operations so that they mm-hmm. can be fairly regulated to allow farmers benefit the rightful values that also come through the research systems. So I believe with that, the farmers are able to grow their capital base and be able to sustain by themselves this kind of food of this seed system, support productivity and better livelihoods.
Okay, thank you very much. Falak, what is really your critical point that you want to take forward and share with the large audience that we have?
Thank you, Walter. I just really want to emphasize the fact that all these three outcomes are really complementary in each other, and we can't have one without the other. And taking the example of just one of the crops, like maybe maize, that is an important crop in Nigeria, it has the socioeconomic impact of maize for farmers. It's huge because it's a staple crop consumed across the nation, and then also its food security impact. Looking at it as food use, it's used for the poultry industry, for direct consumption. So it has an important. It's important for the diet, the Nigerian diet, health and diet. And then the last outcome, which will be the environmental outcome. We understand that maize is not only important for Nigeria, but then also within the landscape. And due to that, there's quite a lot of activity in terms of implementation. So I think we have to look at it from a holistic point of view, which is what the approach we borrowed for the seed roadmap, where we see them as complementary and not taking one out of one and or the other.
Okay. So yeah, it's really a balancing act, but really the key position you mentioned, and basically Geoffrey also says, we always have to take those three and put value on it and not being pulled by one. Okay, Peter, so the same question for you is, how do you really see, what is your critical point that you want to share with the audience in the final minutes of this session?
Yeah, well, for me, the main critical point is to reiterate what I said. The basis should be the client orientation, and there the client is the seed user. And what we need to keep in mind always is that there's a diversity of seed users with a diversity of needs. And that needs to be kept in mind when we think about variety development, when we think about seed packaging and marketing, and also when we think about seed extension. Okay. If we want to optimize the impact of seed sector development, client orientation is key.
Thank you. Maya, what is your take?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I could repeat what Geoffrey, Falak, and Peter have said, but let me add this. I think blueprint solutions do not exist. So when you want to intervene in the seed sector, always start with a thorough analysis of what is already there and build upon what is there and tailor your interventions to local needs.
I think that's a clear message. So it really it adds to some of the principles we have had, but we really have to put these different outcomes always in our mind, get our users, be clear about the objectives, and don't overrate one over the objective of the other. Be really thorough about it and bring the evidence. I think I want to conclude this session because we are hitting our time. I want to set a good example to all of you. Which is even tough because I had to push a little bit in the end, but I think we are okay. I want to thank Peter, Valak, Geoffrey, and Maya for your deliberations and your contributions. And I want to give back the floor to our session master, James.
Thank you very much, Walter, as our session moderator. And thank you again to all of the panelists for a really enjoyable discussion. And I really hope to those of you in the audience that you've taken on board many of the comments and you use this to guide your thinking for the sessions across today, tomorrow, and on Wednesday. Thank you very much. And that indeed can bring this session to a close. So to those of you sticking around, great. We have another very exciting session coming right up now in about 10 minutes. So again, a reminder, if you want to go and freshen up, use the facilities or freshen up your coffee or juice, please do. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes for a session on local seed business revisited, silencing the critics of its sustainability. Thank you. See you soon.